Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here from Kansas State University, and my guest today is going to be Dr. Mike Apley, and we're going to go and talk about Antibiotics 101. If you had questions about how antibiotics work and how we make different choices in the history of antibiotics, well, you stay tuned, enjoy the show, and listen to what Dr. Apley has to say.
Closed captioning brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff, progress, powered by Kansas farmers.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here, Kansas State University, with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Mike Apley, who is a professor here at the College of Veterinary Medicine at Kansas State University, and he is a boarded clinical pharmacologist who works a lot internationally, nationally, locally on antibiotic issues surrounding food animals. And we've had shows where we've talked about antibiotics, about judicious use, and working with your veterinarian. But one of the things we need to every once in a while back up to is, what are these things? And so what are antibiotics? And kind of give us some of the history of these things, Mike.
Well, antibiotics have always been here for a lot of us. We've just always known them and had the option to use them. Actually, our first real antibiotic discovery was, we used the arsenicals back at the turn of the century, starting around the early 1900s, but they had a lot of side effects. In 1928, Sir Alexander Fleming went to a vacation, and he put some petri dishes with Staph aureus growing in them and disinfectant, so they'd be killed off while he was gone, but some of them didn't get under the disinfectant. And he was actually discovering the activity of the arsenicals on the staph. Well, he came back from vacation, and lo and behold, some of them hadn't been submerged, and there were spots where the staph hadn't grown and had been killed off. And it was from spores blown in the window and landing there, and that mold produced the penicillin. He isolated the penicillin, and it was almost a curiosity for a while. They published a lot on it. And it was in the late 30s that Florey and Chain down in Australia figured out how to mass produce in large quantities. And then the first use of penicillin outside the military, remember this was right before World War II when it went to mass production, and then the U.S. geared up to produce it primarily for military use, was 1942, the Tropicana nightclub fire in Boston, Massachusetts. A lot of burn victims, and staph is a real problem. So they used it on them and was taken to the hospital. Actually, the penicillin was in a military convoy because it was classified as really a military secret. So that was 1942, the first widespread use. We had sulfas before them. They were discovered really in 1935, and that brings up the difference between an antibiotic and an antimicrobial. Penicillin's an antibiotic because it's produced by one organism and inhibits the growth of another. Sulfas are a totally synthetic. The first one was a dye that they tested in rabbits and found the antimicrobial activity in there. So it's completely synthetic. And so it's an antimicrobial, which includes the antibiotics. So we have listeners out there who were alive when their only option was a sulfa, and maybe a few that there wasn't really even a sulfa available when they were very young and had an infection. So our antibiotic era is really a lifespan long that we've really truly had effective antibiotics to use.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine when you look at all the different classes and compounds that we've developed since then. But now that bottle has come to a neck and narrowed, where we're not producing or discovering a lot more antibiotic classes or compounds.
The last two novel classes, completely new chemistry, were 2000 and 2003, and that was for human. Before that, it was like 1978 when the fluoroquinolones were first released. So 50s, 60s through the 70s, it was like we have beaten infectious disease. We've conquered it. We're now realizing that that's not true, and we're going to have to look at some completely novel mechanisms of action against bacteria to advance more options in the future.
Cool. We're going to take a break, folks. When we come back, more on antibiotics with Dr. Mike Apley.
This Meet the Future Veterinarian is brought to you by Zuprevo. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Ashley Zondlak grew up working on her neighbor's dairy operation, and at 16, it became her full-time job. Over the years, she has shown cattle at local fairs, volunteered at Breakfast on the Farm events, and during vet school, she worked in Michigan State University's mastitis lab. After graduation, Ashley's goal is to work as a food animal practitioner.
As fourth-generation farmers themselves, Heinen Brothers Ag Service understands the risk and rewards of farming. So when it comes to quality aerial and ground application, fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia, call Heinen Brothers Ag today, 800-760-4964.
Watch Ag AM in Kansas online at agaminkansas.com. DocTalk, brought to you by Santa Fe Trail Meats in Overbrook, or visit us online at sftmeats.com.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson and Dr. Mike Apley for Kansas State University College of Veterinary Medicine, where Dr. Apley is a professor and a clinical pharmacologist here at the veterinary school. He teaches students about antibiotics, about other drugs, other compounds, and he works a lot within agriculture and does a lot of service for agriculture, whether it's on a national or international level. When we talk about antibiotics and keeping the technology available for us on the farm and ranch, and let's get into some of these about how these antibiotics work, because it's amazing to me. We put it in the animal and they go find the bacteria, or the bacteria find it, or they run into each other, or whatever. But what are some of the things that we do that differentiate antibiotics?
Well, the antibiotics are different by their chemical structure. So when we talk about the macrolides or the penicillins or the cephalosporins or the tetracyclines, it's a group that's very chemically similar, and then they differ by different groups hung on there that give different activities. Or, for example, the fluoroquinolones, it recognize adenofloxacin or enrofloxacin.
Baytril or Addison.
Yeah. And those, the very first ones, really didn't have that good of pharmacokinetics. As far as how they moved in the body, they had some side effects, and then they kept working with them and adding a group here or subtracting one here to get to the ones we have today, which are really quite effective, and that's true for all the groups. So the groups, when we talk about them as groups, are chemically similar, and they have different ways of acting. A lot of them work by binding to the part of the bacterial cell that produces proteins and knocking out its ability to produce proteins. Others work by working directly on the DNA, and bacteria have DNA just like we do. And again, the example of the fluoroquinolones, they work by sabotaging the splitting and replication of the DNA. The sulfas, one of the first ones, they work by actually inhibiting the bacteria's ability to produce folic acid.
So when you get into this, one of the things that we always talk about are static or cidal. These are either bacteriostatic or bactericidal. What's the difference between static and cidal antibiotics?
There's two ways we do it in the lab. Okay. One is by how far apart the concentration is it takes to just inhibit growth. So if you take the antibiotic away, it will regrow. How far that concentration is for how much it takes to completely sterilize the culture. The other one is how fast it kills. Okay. So it's not a black or white, it's being separated by so many magnitudes.
But in general, the difference between a static drug and a cidal drug would be?
One slows growth and the immune system comes in and cleans them up. The other one tends to kill, the bactericidal tends to kill more, and then the immune system still has to come in and clean up the mess. But both statics and cidal can work, and there are a lot of things that make up how an antibiotic works. Static versus cidal is one of many, so it's something to be aware of, but it's not the end all on one drug being better or worse than the other.
Right. It's just a difference in the mechanism. When we come back, I want to talk some about the long-acting, some of the differences in oral and injectables, and just how these antibiotics differ and do their job. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching DocTalk. More after these messages.
Broadband has become as important to us as highways. That is why DocTalk is teaming up with NTCA, the Rural Broadband Association, and rural broadband companies like Blue Valley Telecommunications, in fighting for quality broadband access through the program Smart Rural Communities.
I don't think we have any idea what's coming in the future. I couldn't have imagined 5 years ago what we're doing today. So in 2 years, I would guess there's things we can't imagine that we're going to be doing.
To learn more, visit ntca.org/smart or bluevalley.net.
No matter where, no matter why, the Veterinary Health Center at Kansas State University is committed to providing quality patient care to animals and exceptional customer service to their owners. From routine checkups to emergency and specialty care, our world-renowned specialists and experienced professionals are here to discover, to teach, and to heal.
Let us know.
How can I help?
How can we help?
This hog is head over hoof for meal made from U.S. soybeans. Now, one hog isn't that impressive, but suppose we add another, and another, and another. Before long, you've got billions of hungry customers around the world all clamoring for the same thing. Our soybeans. Learn more about the billion-dollar appetite of animal agriculture at BeyondTheElevator.com. Brought to you by America's soybean farmers and their checkoff.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
I'm Dr. Frank Lyons, a physician here at Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center. As one of the only standalone stem cell centers in the U.S., we use your stem cells as therapy for arthritis and some autoimmune diseases.
I'm Dr. Andrew Poe. Here at Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center, utilizing the latest technology under strict protocols, we're able to harvest your stem cells from your own fat to treat a variety of medical conditions. The best part about it is, it's a same-day surgical procedure and requires no general anesthesia.
Soil is the life of a farm, and for 25 years, SureCrop Liquid Crop Nutrition has helped growers produce abundant quality crops while preserving and improving the soils they steward. SureCrop offers complete soil and plant analysis with cropping recommendations, delivery direct to your on-farm storage, and quality crop nutrition custom blended for your field. Choose SureCrop for the assurance of excellence for your soil. Call today or visit their website for more information.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
ValleyVet.com, ValleyVet.com, Valley Vet Supply.
DocTalk, brought to you by
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, Progress, powered by Kansas farmers.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here with Dr. Mike Apley. Dr. Apley is a clinical pharmacologist here at the Kansas State University College of Veterinary Medicine and serves all the agricultural food animal industries in protecting this technology we call antibiotics and working with these industries to help support judicious use of antimicrobials. And we talked about static versus cidal, slowing growth versus killing, which both of them are effective. But what about the long-acting antibiotics? What does that mean?
Frankly, I've gone to the single injection term because it helps me understand better. But long-acting means after one injection, you have a longer duration during which you can measure drug concentrations in the body. And in the last 10 to 15 years, we've had a real advancement in helping us understand exactly what those concentrations mean. Some of them are very meaningful, some of them aren't. But I really go to single injection, where you can give one single injection,
right,
and that will see you through for a certain time period when you make the decision on whether or not that animal is recovered or whether it needs more therapy. And that's one of the key critical things we've talked about before that a producer needs to do with their veterinarian is clearly understand how long after the administration of that antibiotic that decision needs to be made of, yeah, it helped them get better or it didn't. And the reason I use single injection is we have some antibiotics that will work against the disease with a single injection that are actually almost unmeasurable in 48 hours. And we have some.
You mean in the body?
In the body, yeah.
Right,
in the
they're
body.
cleared in the body.
They're cleared,
Yeah.
at least therapeutic concentrations.
Right,
There may
right.
be some residues. And we have some that work by single injection that you could measure concentrations out as long as 10 to 12 days.
Now, part of that is because they have different mechanisms of action, the duration versus concentration dependent.
Right. And some of these drugs work best by one big high hit, and then they can leave, and some require a constant steady pressure on the bacteria, and they need to be there a while. And it's the way, based on how they interact with the bacteria and the target. That's what I still, when I go out in the field, I'm still thinking single injection or we need multiple. And all that science rolls into whether you can give it once or you need to give it multiple times. But regardless of the mechanism for being able to give it once, again, knowing when to say yes, they need more or they don't need more is the absolute critical thing for our listeners to understand.
Yeah, and that's understanding and working with your veterinarian to understand how long the antibiotic, if you use an antibiotic that's on board in the animal at a therapeutic dose for 48 hours, you need to wait 48 hours before you introduce another compound. And if it's on board for 7 days, you need to know that giving an antibiotic at 4 days
right
is could be harmful if the wrong compound's used at the time that you're using one of these long-acting antibiotics.
Because some of them don't like each other very much.
Right, and that gets back to our cytostatic, and mixing those types of drugs together. And so working with your veterinarian to understand that sometimes you can do harm.
Being inventive isn't always good.
Right. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back from this message, we're going to wrap up with Dr. Apley talking about Antibiotics 101, and I'm sure we're going to have him back for a revamp on the course. Stay tuned.
The BQA Tip of the Day, sponsored by Beringer Engelheim Vetmedica, Inc.
Hello folks, this is Dr. Nels Lindberg with Animal Medical Center and Production Animal Consultation out of Great Bend, Kansas. Today's BQA Tip of the Day, we're going to talk about lung scoring cattle and the newest tool we have available to us today to use to help us better identify the severity of respiratory disease in cattle is a stethoscope. For the last 50 years, the only two ways we've pulled and treated sick cattle is by visual observation, as well as then once they're in the chute, is using a thermometer to see what their temperature was. Up until a few years ago, we have never had a tool such as this to give us another tool to our toolbox to help us better identify the animal and the severity of the disease that they may have. It's very easy, works very well. You place the stethoscope right here, it records the lung sound, kicks it across to the computer, kicks out a lung score, as you can see up here, and then we can use that as part of our decision-making process and antibiotic selection for these sick animals. It's a great resource. It's the best thing we've had since a thermometer. Let's put it to use.
Healthy cows start with the new hired hand automatic livestock sprayer. Rancher invented to provide an efficient alternative to pour-on and injectable parasite management systems. The portable design allows cattle to treat themselves head to hoof. Strategic device placement with pass-through activation technology takes the stress out of parasite treatment for cattle and the rancher. Get the new hired hand for yourself or become a distributor. Visit cowsprayer.com. The new hired hand makes healthy cows easy.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Here's another gardening tip with Annette Jackson from Jackson's Greenhouse.
Well-designed container flower gardens bring beauty to your home, at your entry, on your patio, or placed in a special spot in your landscape. Let Jackson's help you select the correct plant combinations which will add the color and style you need and that will survive the summer to provide beauty till frost.
Our annual flat sale is going on now. Choose a flat of 4 packs for just $18.99.
Jackson's Greenhouse has what you need today.
Buying a car shouldn't be this hard. And at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego, it isn't. It's actually awesome. Whether you want a new or used car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. Even if you want to custom order a new car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. See Toby's team at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego. We're awesome.
Watch Ag AM in Kansas online at agaminkansas.com. Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or for more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson and Dr. Mike Apley here from Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. And Dr. Apley is a professor in clinical pharmacology, and we're talking about antibiotics. And Mike, we talked about static versus sidal antibiotics. We've talked about concentration-dependent versus duration-dependent antibiotics. So really two important decisions that veterinarians have to make when they're helping make the decision on which drugs to use. But you know, some of the things, oral versus injectable and spectrum of activity, are two things I have circled that you know, just walk me through a little bit on the difference between the oral versus injectable.
Yeah, great example there, the tetracyclines. So everyone listening who works with cattle or hogs understands there's injectable and there's oral versions. And in cattle, if you look at the dose for a long-acting oxytetracycline injection, it's 9 milligrams per pound. Some have 13.5 milligrams per pound that's given once. Then you look at the oral feed administration form, and it's 10 milligrams per pound per day. And you go, wow, well, so they're the same. Well, they're not, because the oral bioavailability of the tetracyclines is really very low. So given 10 milligrams per pound per day in the feed is nowhere near reaching the same concentrations in the animal as given 9 milligrams per pound once that goes over 3 days, or the 13.5, which goes a little longer, because the concentration in their blood from the oral at roughly the same dose is about 1/6 to 1/8 the concentration that would be obtained by injecting it. So it's not the same. It's very different. So now, especially as veterinarians are going to be required to authorize that feed use, rather as now it being over the counter, that's one of the considerations the veterinarian is going to make is, okay, is it appropriate to use this, which is going to result in much lower systemic concentrations, or do we need to inject with another tetracycline? So the oral is the same dose given orally isn't necessarily the same drug reaching the animal as given systemically.
And with some of the oral products too. I mean, I use the oral products quite a bit, but you know, sick animals don't eat.
Right.
And so that's the other consideration, and now you're working with animal behavior and so many other things. And a lot of times, if I know that the calf is on the end of the needle,
yeah,
I know they got it, but I got to catch them too.
Well, and don't take us wrong, as in saying that oral tetracyclines aren't effective for some diseases, and especially controlling clinical anaplasmosis. Those out there have herds with anaplasmosis challenges starting in August through probably a month after vector season. We're going to have to do something to control clinical disease, and very low doses of that oral tetracycline is just enough to keep that anaplasma organism from running off and being really harmful to cows and bulls.
Well, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you.
It's always great to have Dr. Apley here. Remember, work with your local veterinarian to develop your antimicrobial stewardship program and your program for your herd and treatment. If you want to know more about what we do here at K-State, you can find us on the web at www.vet.ksu.edu. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson. You've been watching DocTalk today. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you down the road.
Closed captioning brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission.
The Soybean Checkoff, Progress, powered by Kansas farmers.